Okay. All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Herzl Hefter, and today we are presenting a new webinar, If You Can't Break Them, Join Them, a New Approach to Content Silos. In this webinar, you will learn how to plan and provide a single point of access to the content of the different teams in your organization with a shared knowledge foundation. To learn more about SuiteShare, Suite Solutions Social Knowledge Base, contact us or see our website. Some procedural points. Those of you who have joined us in the past are familiar with them. If you can type the questions in the question window, but in order to ensure the flow of the presentation, Joe will relate to the questions at the end. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in and Joe will get to them. If you think of a question later, don't worry about it. Just email it to us and we'll be happy to provide the answer and get back to you. This webinar is being recorded and everyone will receive a link to the slides and to the recording in a few days. Okay, so we're ready to begin. So I'd like to introduce Joe Gelb, President of Suite Solutions. Joe?
Hi, thank you, Herzl, and thanks everybody for joining us. Okay, as Herzl said, my name is Joe Gelb, founder of Suite Solutions. At Suite Solutions, our vision is to enable you to engage your customers by providing quick access to relevant information. A lot of times we talk about a lot of nitty-gritty solutions and XML and silos and all kinds of technical stuff, but really it's very important for us all to remember that in the end of the day, what we're trying to do is engage our customers, our readers, by providing quick access information that's useful for them. So I think that's very important for us to keep in mind all the time as we walk through the different details and the technical solutions. We help companies get it right the first time, generally using XML-based authoring and publishing solutions. We feature our flagship product, which is called SuiteShare. It's a social knowledge-based system, which we'll be talking about a little bit later towards the end if we have some time. We have a lot of experience in various industries, aerospace, defense, high-tech, manufacturing, healthcare, etc. And we're very lucky to have a blue-chip customer base, which enables us to generate a lot of in-house experience in our team. And we're always looking for folks that we can go and help your companies as well. So the main topics we're going to talk about today are what are content silos and why are they good? And we'll talk about what's wrong with silos and why are trying to break them up. People are trying to break them up all the time. And what's the alternative? Well, we'll talk about why we can't just break up those silos. We'll talk about if there's any value in joining the silos, and if so, how can we do that? So let's dive right in. So first let's define what is a content silo. So content silo is a series of content types that are produced by different groups in the company or organization that are authored, managed, and accessed with their own tools, processes, and content model. Okay, and there's various different types of content that you'll find folks in an organization producing, whether it be technical publications or training content, marketing content, videos. Social platforms are becoming more and more dominant or at least vocal in their use in different websites. Communities are becoming more and more in place in different websites. And something which I call domain knowledge base, which is, a lot of companies or organizations have information that they have on their website, which is not necessarily product information or support information or service information. For example, if I'm a standards organization and my content is my product and I'm really selling my domain knowledge, or if I have safety information about the types of products that I sell, okay, or if I'm a healthcare company or a medical device company and I have a whole knowledge base of articles or information about medical conditions. Okay, so that's what I would call domain knowledge. That is also a type of content silo that is created, maintained, and deployed by many organizations. Okay. So if we go over a few of the more common silos that we'll see in organizations and talk about the characteristics of them, and we'll keep those in mind as we talk about silos and what to do about them. So a technical publication is a fairly big silo in a lot of companies. Often in terms of volume of content, it's very large. Unfortunately, for many of us in terms of budget and attention that tech pubs receive in a lot of organizations. Unfortunately, it doesn't go along with the volume and importance. But in any case, we'll put that festering sore aside for a little bit. But technical publications generally deals with task information, feature descriptions, licensing information. We talk about people who contribute that information as not only technical writers, but often the tech writers will field contributions from subject matter experts or engineers. That content needs to be edited and be reviewed also often, and that requires different processes and tools. Tech pubs tends to be relatively complex and relatively structured, and more it's becoming more and more modular, especially folks who are implementing XML standards such as DITA or S1000D. Traditionally, tech pubs people used to use desktop publishing tools like Word or FrameMaker or InDesign. But now there's a strong tendency towards XML-based documentation. Tech pubs is often used or stored in source control systems or content management systems or component CMS systems to manage and publish that content to various formats. Okay, so tech pubs is a very, I would say, very relatively complex and important silo, something that needs to be dealt with especially. There's a lot of tools and processes that go along with tech pubs. Learning and training is another silo that is very prominent and prevalent in a lot of organizations. Learning and training can be instructor-led training, which is produced and given. It could be online e-learning training. It's more and more likely to be modular and structured and interactive. And the interactivity also provides opportunity for specialized tools, okay, and deployment methods. Traditionally, learning and training people, we used to use desktop publishing tools or PowerPoint. The tendency nowadays is more towards HTML or even XML-based content. The use of LMS systems often uses HTML or XML, but prominently usually HTML as the underlying data format. And that content is often managed in components and published to either PDFs, for instructor-led training, or e-learning, like SCORM, for example, and also PowerPoint still. And now there's a larger push towards mobile and video. Again, that also lends itself towards a separate or a particular set of tools that would be useful for this particular content silo. Technical support is another silo that's very important in a lot of industries or a lot of companies. Technical support people are writing knowledge articles. Those knowledge articles are often made available on websites for customers to provide a self-serve experience, but also for other support people or service engineers. The content, as opposed to technical publications or learning content, for technical support content generally tends to be relatively short and discrete. Support people often use web-based case management or knowledge-based systems or tools for writing this content. And we're seeing more and more that support or technical support articles are being written or at least integrated with CRM systems, with customer relationship management systems like Salesforce and Oracle and systems like that. The reason being that CRM is not just about marketing to people and selling to people or knowing who people are. It's about understanding what they have purchased, what are they interested in, and creating a whole picture of the customer when he or she comes to the site and asks for support. That's it. There's a lot of articles being written about that, and you'll see a lot of CRM systems they'll offer their own knowledge-based type of system. Marketing is another very important content silo. Generally, we think of marketing content being the main corpus or the front end of the website. Okay, but marketing also consists of brochures, data sheets. Sometimes this content is shared with the web content, sometimes it's not. Content is not only available or needing to be available on the web, but it often needs to be outputted to high fidelity print for online and more mobile consumption. Marketing people are generally concerned with consistent branding and message. They're concerned with analytics. Traditionally, for print content or for brochures, marketing folks will use InDesign and Quark, which is generally not structured. It's generally all formatting and hardly any structure, as opposed again to learning and tech doc content, those silos. So there's a wider and growing use of social media tools that we spoke about before, which is becoming more and more important part of the toolkit, or plethora of types of content that marketing people are putting out there. Marketing people are interested in collecting metrics and analytics about who's looking at the content, how often they're looking at the content, and which content is most important. And the truth is that we're seeing more and more that tech pubs and other folks are also interested in collecting these metrics about who's looking at the content in order to be able to get good feedback about what content needs to be updated, which content is stale. Generally in marketing, we have a resistance to XML-based tools because they're generally considered to be not user-friendly. So whereas a technical publication writer would roll up their sleeves and dive into an XML editor and semantically tag their heart away, so marketing people want something that's a little bit more easy to use and get content up there and push it out, review it, and get it onto the website. Digital named DAM, the acronym slips my mind. Digital asset management systems are also very prevalent inside of marketing organizations, where videos, graphics, pictures, images, all kinds of other types of content would be stored. So we listed some of the main content silos we'll find in many organizations. The question now is, who needs to access this information? So all this information needs to be accessible to a lot of different people, to customers, to partners, to service technicians, people out in the field who need to get this content quickly and easily, for technical support staff who are sitting in-house and need to support customers, either via phone or email or chat. Marketing and salespeople need access to the content when they're on-site at a customer or when they try to put together a sales proposal. We shouldn't forget that those people also need quick access to this information, and prospective customers as well. Customers more and more, or prospective customers, are more and more looking at the documentation, looking at the information and the ease and availability of information before they push the button and purchase. Something very important to keep in mind. So we talked about different silos and how they serve different types of information. So the question is, so what's wrong with them? Well, the problem with silos is that there becomes an overlap of information. So similar content is often developed by multiple people. So for example, a tech support person might use documentation, technical documentation, to help understand the product, but then they'll go ahead and they'll write separate troubleshooting and how-to articles. Well, very often that information is very useful, but it doesn't find its way back to the documentation, doesn't get there. So we find the support people writing very similar information, sometimes overlapping what you find in documentation. Learning and training people will also use documentation as a source for building their courseware, but again, often their expertise about how to explain the use of products is not, will often not get back into the technical documentation. So again, we have a case where two silos will be creating very similar types of information with no feedback loop or very little feedback loop or sharing in between them. Technical writers look to support people to get real feedback from the field, problems that are being encountered and how they're being solved, how the products are actually being used. Okay, so again, we see that technical writers are looking for knowledge articles and try to more and more trying to get that content back into the technical documentation. Marketing folks, they create data sheets, feature information that often is drawn from the technical documentation or engineering documentation. Technical writers look for engineering and PLM as a source material, and the QA people look to documentation for test plans. So the examples go on and on that there are different people, organizations are looking to reuse content and are developing content that often is very similar. Now, the other main thing that's wrong with silos is that It's difficult to create and enforce the consistent message, consistent branding, and a consistent user experience. And that's something the marketing people, you'll hear more and more harp on. Each silo has its own delivery method and format. Okay, documentation is being delivered in one format, the learning is in another format. Similar content is being developed by multiple people. And often that has inconsistent messaging and inconsistent branding. It's difficult for users to hone in on the relevant content that they need. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, when I have different silos and I'm trying to find this different information, how do I find the most relevant content? Often there's a need to search over multiple sites with varying navigation, different search methods, different keywords, different categorizations. Okay, often there's different jumping around through search results without knowing what I'm really looking for. Did I find the right thing? Did I didn't find the right thing? And what's maybe one of the most important problems is that there's ambiguity over which source is the most updated and the most complete. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to show you a website. Okay, so I picked a website a little bit out of the air. Okay, not to pick on this company particularly. I actually like this company, and I like the website. But I think it's indicative or illustrative of the websites of big companies these days, maybe even your own website. So if I go to the website and I want to find information, okay, let's take a look at what I can find. I find support, I find training, I find community. So there's already 3 different silos I see right from the support from the home page. Okay, so if I click or hover over the support, okay, I can search a knowledge base. Okay, I can click on product documentation. And there are also technical papers. I'm not sure how technical papers are different than product documentation, or why I would want to click. I would want to search one over the other. Compatibility guides. Okay, so again, I have a training silo. I have a consulting silo. I have a download silo. I have a knowledge base silo. And I have a product documentation. Now once I go into community, now if I go to product documentation, so now I can start looking at documentation. Now sometimes I might find the PDF. Okay. Now if I click around here, I'll find not only PDFs, I'll find ebooks, EPUBs, I'll find a very nice info center knowledge base. But here I also have knowledge base, which is evidently a little bit different than documentation, because when I click on it, I get to a support knowledge base, okay, which has a whole series of articles that were written by the support people. Okay, so again, it gives you an idea of on mycompany.com, right? When I go to a company website and I try to find information, now how do I find it? And the searchability and the tagging is often inconsistent between different silos inside the website. Okay, so if I'm a user, I'm a technician, where am I supposed to go? I have a certain problem. Should I look in documentation? Should I look in the articles? Should I go to communities? Now if I click on communities, okay, now behind the scenes here you'll find that there's a system called Jive, which is becoming more and more popular these days. Just kind of click into one of these. Okay, when I click into one of these communities, I find discussions, I find documents, okay, and I find discussion groups. And I can search through here, but I'm not really sure whether, is this relevant anymore? Is this using the same configuration of the product that I'm using? Is this been vetted by the company, by the company who's hosting this? Are there technical people from this company actually looking at these communities and making comments about whether it's valid or not valid? So again, there's a multiplicity of silos. They're all good information, but there's no way I can get to one way to get to all the relevant information about the product, the configuration, and the task I'm trying to do. Okay, so I think you guys get the idea. I'm going to go back to the slides. Oops. Here we go. Okay, so if we do a review, so what's wrong with silos? So number one, we have difficult accessibility to relevant updated content. Okay, people want one place to go to easily and quickly find the most relevant information to accomplish their immediate goal. Okay, and my goal now may not be the same goal that I have next week or tomorrow or even 2 minutes from now. Okay. The lack of easy access to information lowers customer satisfaction. Okay, when you have multiple addresses or silos for information, it wastes people time. They need to search in multiple sites. They might need to call support if they can't find what they need, which increases your support costs. In any case, there are papers being written that say that most customers say they prefer self-serve anyway. If they have to pick up the phone, call support, that makes them already unhappy before they even talk to a support person. Okay, so you already have a handicap working against you. Increases your downtime for your customers when it takes them longer to solve problems. Okay, and because of all that, it significantly increases the chances of your customers leaving and sharing negative feedback with others online. So on the flip side, a satisfied customer will buy more from you and will recommend your products to their colleagues and their friends, which is what we all would wish and hope for. Okay, so the question is, what's the alternative? Should we break down or normalize those silos? And there's a lot of talk about that in the content modeling, information architecture consulting world, which I have to admit that we're part of. Okay, and often we talk about normalizing, or people say breakdown. I like to call it normalizing the silos, moving to a common XML-based content model like DITA. DITA is an XML format or an XML standard that's used in technical documentation, but a large number of other types of domains also outside of technical documentation. Okay, so normalizing or breaking down the silos means moving to a common content model. It means migrating those content groups, those silos, to a single tool set, which supports all those different types of contents, whether it be a component content management system, the authoring tools, the publishing tools, the workflow tools, the collaboration tools. Okay, you need to either move everyone over to that common model and then migrate everybody over to that common tool set, or you have to make sure that all the tools that people are using are fully XML compliant and can implement the common model that you lay out. Okay. Okay, and preferably they should all be linked together so people can reuse them. Okay. You need to convert the existing content to your common model. Okay, so you have a common content model or tagging model or semantic model. So you need to migrate and convert that content over, and you need to develop XML-based publishing for all those various formats. Okay, so that doesn't sound like so much, right? So it turns out that's a lot of work, and so that's a lot of work to do for one group. Never mind a lot of different groups. Okay, so what do you think? Should we go forward with that? Does it sound like a plan? Okay, so when we talk about content silos, okay, you ever tried taking candy away from a baby? Okay, so people like what they're using now, and by taking things away from people that they're already using that they like, it can cause some reactions that we don't often like too much. Okay, so let's have a reality check. Why can't you just break down those silos? Okay, number one, and I'm quoting here from an article that Joanne Hackos wrote, and you can see that online. So one reason why you can't break down silos is that the entrenched practices, processes, and tools by those different groups within the organization. So like we said, each team has invested in tools and processes that are customized for their own type of content. If we think about what we talked about before, we spoke about different types of silos, the TechPub silo, the learning silo, all these different types of silos. They all have different content, and they all have really different uses and different use cases, and the tools that they choose and invest in are built around their type of content and their type of users. Okay? So when we say they're entrenched in those things, they're entrenched for a good reason. They invested in them, and they want to keep using them. On the other side, there's a lack of tools. Even if we wanted to unentrench people, and we could successfully do that, there are a lack of tools that really make the information development straightforward and simple by all individuals in the product development lifecycle. So I would like to say one size does not fit all. And you know what? If you can find the shoe that fits everybody, that's a really big shoe. Okay, it's hard to tie that around everybody. There's lack of a high-level champion who is willing to and who is able to bring the organization together to support a quality improvement that will reduce the cost, improve the quality, and improve traceability. Okay, so not all organizations have a champion who's willing to step up to the plate and make the decisions that are ready for change. So a lot of organizations have those pointy-haired dudes and not enough champions. Okay, now I have to tell you that I don't know about you guys, but as I become I spend some of my time in the managerial and the consulting role, so sometimes I tend to find myself being more and more conservative and my hair getting a little bit more pointy. Okay, and when you invest in things and you build expertise, so it's very easy to grow pointy hair and to kind of stand your ground and not argue against innovation and change. So I don't know if you remember, guys, if you guys remember Mr. T, but if he had a silo, I wouldn't want to mess with him. Okay, and each person in our I guess each group in our company, they have a Mr. T over there who's guarding their silo, and to beat up the pit bull over there and to get over them and to try to convince them that there might be a better way. It's just not so easy. Okay, so we talked about the silos. We talked about that silos are less than perfect. We talked about that they're not so easy to normalize them or to break them down. So is there real value in joining them? And I think we can say that there is. Meaning joining those silos can provide, when I say joining, I'm talking about joining as opposed to breaking, right? So joining silos can provide an easy and single point of entry for accessing content. Okay, we're talking about accessing content. If I could change the slide right now, I would maybe, and it wasn't already bold, I would bold the word access, because right now we're talking about accessing content. Okay, now for content consumers, our readers, our users, we want them to be able to easily find all the relevant content to quickly achieve their immediate goal. For content creators inside of our organization, okay, we're talking about folks who want to locate, reuse, and share content. Okay, now if we can't break down the silos and we're just joining them, so even if even if they cannot, even if they find the content and they can't just point, click, and reuse as they would if they would be able to in a one single silo, right? That at least they know that it exists and they can make reference to it. Okay, and that's not a small thing. It also builds awareness inside the organization in the business case for migrating closer to a common XML-based framework. What does that mean? That means that a lot of tools out there, okay, even if they're different silos, there are silos and there are silos, right? So some silos can be based on a content model that is structured, or a content model can be based on a content that's unstructured. Okay, now as there is more and more awareness of an organization that people can find content, and there's more and more of a desire to reuse that content, so it builds awareness and a business case for different groups to migrate their own tools and choose tools that are built on XML or an XML-based framework that can later on be linked together more easily. Okay, encourages those groups to make sure that their silos are structurally rich, semantically aware, and be accessible and adaptable to others. Okay, so for example, if I have a silo of a company, part of my company, and all they're producing is PDFs, right? So it's very easy. It's not very easy to search through and to semantically query through a PDF file, right? But if the same group is producing their content in HTML or HTML5 or in some kind of XML-based format, and there's some kind of structure in there, there's some kind of a semantic tagging in there in any way, shape, or form, so it makes it much easier to access the content and make it adaptable for others later on down the pike. Okay, so joining the silos enables us to communicate with existing and future systems. When I say future systems, we all like to think that the end of the days is coming and that everyone's kind of migrating towards a unified field theory or something, that everyone's kind of moving together to one silo. The truth is that silos are increasing, like an expanding universe, right? They're just getting more and more. I don't know if we just implemented something for a customer that says, share this. You can go to a web page, a knowledge base page, and you can click on share this. And there's like, there's icons for LinkedIn and Facebook and a couple other ones. When you click on a button, there's like 80 or something different types of social knowledge bases, social knowledge systems. These types of systems are growing and growing. Okay, they're not getting smaller. If we would have thought 5 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that we would need to be providing all our content in mobile, so that's relatively new. We were thinking about PDF and online help for so long that mobile came, it kind of like took everybody by storm. So future systems are growing. Okay, so joining all the silos meaning being able to allow people to access content easily, communicate with existing systems and the framework for future systems. And I would like to suppose that, or propose, that taxonomy is the glue that's going to hold it all together. And we're going to talk about that shortly. So we talk about we're joining those silos. We're talking about bringing together those CRM systems, the CMS systems, those LMS systems, all those systems we talked about before, that where folks are creating content and contributing content and reviewing content, okay, and join them with a knowledge portal, okay, which allows not only the content contributors to get access to everyone else's content, but also our customers, our salespeople, our customers, our service engineers, and our partners. Now we talk about expanding systems, so a lot of these social networks and big data, and they're all, or a lot of them are being built on new types of databases or cloud services, okay, or Java databases, and there's going to be a need for the knowledge portal not only to be able to be connected via via search and XML or even taxonomy, but also using systems that can reach into, query and reach into these other disparate systems and pull information out of them. We partner with a company called 28MSec, for example, whose specialty is not just to search these types of systems, but also to run queries to these systems. So we talk about metadata, we're going to talk about taxonomy and contextual relevance later on. So applying that to these types of systems that are growing, and we have less and less control over, so we can use technologies like that. So we talk about getting content to the right person, and now allowing them to reach their goal. We're talking about something called contextual relevance, talking about what they need and when they need it. So part of building a system is not just the pyrotechnics of putting all these systems together using some kind of a framework or some kind of a database connectivity, all this other stuff. It means figuring out not only the technical but also how all this information is strung together. And what is that based on? It should be based on who's accessing the content and what are they trying to do. So if we think about the customer, like who's reading us, who's the audience, what's their profile, what's their persona, what are they trying to do? Are they an end user? Are they an engineer? Are they a technician? They're a marketing person. They're the guy down the street who just wants to do the search on, on medical articles. Who are they? Okay, vis-a-vis your particular domain, your company, and your organization, and what you're trying to provide. Okay. What equipment are they operating? If they purchase some equipment from you or a product, what version are they using? What configuration? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they installing something? Are they using something? Are they upgrading something? Are they making a purchasing decision? Okay, what device are they viewing the information on? Okay, mobile. Are they going to have network access? Now, not everybody has network access, believe it or not. Okay, especially you'd be surprised. Most people, the rank and file consumer like me and you, we walk around with our cell phones. We have network access all the time. But the truth of the matter is that a large number of B2B, people who are providing services or products to other companies, their technicians and their users are in facilities that do not have, they don't have open internet access, or they don't have access whatsoever. It's something that we really have to keep in mind. So here's some examples. For example, I'm a support person, so if I want to talk about what I want to focus with that person and how to get them quick access to their information, I'm a support person. How do I troubleshoot? That's the type of activity. A certain type of phone that fails to synchronize using a certain piece of equipment, using a certain operating system. Okay, so it's, again, trying to focus information based on on the relevance of what that person's trying to do. Okay, I'm using a GPS. I want to download maps using a certain GPS. I'm using Bluetooth, and then where am I? Okay, so this is again like a certain context. Someone's trying to perform a certain goal. Okay. Okay, if you get that, if you think about it, by the way, the illustrations we're talking about, so a simple search is not going to, simple pre-text search is not going to get the most relevant content right away. Okay. Now, we're talking about social engagement. So social engagement is not just social media and allowing people to share things. It's understanding that we as content providers, we can't be everywhere at once. So we know a lot about our products, all the different silos and folks in our organization. We all know a lot about our products. We know how they work. We know how to install them. We know how to support them, etc. But we don't know necessarily all the potential uses and problems that might arise. Okay, but the vast corpus of our customers do. So engaging our customers and allowing them to make contributions from the field, add articles, make tips, give feedback, maybe even whip out their phone, take a video and upload it and make that shareable, or at least submit it to you for feedback. That's important information. Helps us improve the quality of our information and timeliness of our information by allowing users to comment, okay, and give feedback. Letting users build and share their own documents is also becoming more and more an important goal. Meaning, if I'm a company and I bought your product and I want to provide special documentation, I want to pull out the pieces that are relevant to me and share that with everyone in my company who's going to be using this thing. Right? So they don't have to hunt throughout your documentation to find what's useful for them at that moment. Okay, so building your own documents and sharing your own documents and making those documents viewable online, in print, and on mobile devices, that's all important. Here another illustration of a domain knowledge like we spoke about before. Information that's on website that's not necessarily based on product information. Okay, so for example, I have knowledge about business consulting. Okay, so I'm a small business owner. I want information that's relevant to me about taxes, about healthcare, about compliance, etc. I want to compile my own set of links. First of all, I want to find the most relevant content to me. I want to compile my own set of links. I want to download it to my phone so I can reference it later on when I'm offline. And I want to automatically update that content on my smartphone when I am online so I can see that later on. Okay. Another illustration of field service. Field service is a big driver for a lot of manufacturing organizations for the products, for systems like this. I'm a service engineer. I need to install a certain type of equipment using a certain protocol. It's very technical, but it's real. Connecting to a certain device manager using a field communicator, no access. Spoke about that. I want to pull together the most updated information about this product and about how I'm going to configure it and install it. And I want to put it on my tablet because when I go on site, I know I'm not going to have access to the internet. Now, once I get on site, I'll figure out how to solve some kind of tricky problem that arose. So I take out my smartphone, I shoot a short video to illustrate how I did it. When I get online, I want to write up a little article. I want to upload that video, and I want my colleagues to be able to learn from my experience. Okay, so we're talking about, we talk about silos. We're also talking about folks being able to, our users, our customers being able to feed into our corpus of information and sharing it with you and sharing it with others. Okay, I'm going to skip through this, but this is another example of providing information that's not necessarily relevant to a certain product, but we see more and more pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies. They don't just have information about their products. They have information about the medical conditions that they come to help, okay, or to heal. Okay, so if I have some kind of a medical condition and I want to find out information about that, I'm thinking about using a certain pharmaceutical or a certain type of device. So going to a website and pulling together information and downloading to my tablet, so I go and I'm talking to my doctor, I can be educated. Okay, now we're going to take a little break and we're going to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of how this can happen. Okay, so when we talk about giving quick access to relevant information, so it's, it's not voodoo and it's not magic, it's not hocus pocus. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. Okay, and there's a couple different approaches to categorizing content. Traditionally, folks use something called metadata. I'm sure you've all heard of metadata. Okay, and that's a way of tagging up the content. More and more, we find that taxonomy and classification is also being used, or as a replacement as an alternative method to categorizing content. And that basically means building a knowledge model of your domain and then taking that knowledge model and applying it to your content. Okay, so if you think about tags, right, you go to a lot of websites and you can search on tags, or you can tag your content. Sometimes the tags are the choices that are already made for you, and sometimes you can even type in your own. But in a way that's kind of classifying your content using tags, right? With taxonomy and classification, we're talking about going one step further, and we'll talk about what that really means. But first, before we get into taxonomy, let's talk about what's wrong with metadata. So the problem with metadata is that it's often embedded inside the content or lives as an accessory to that content in some kind of format, sometimes proprietary, or in any case something you need to get through and to be able to search and understand. Okay, and often it requires you, if you want to apply metadata, it often requires you to have access to change that content. Okay, so that's a problem, and that leads to, we talked about before about the different content silos. Now, one of the reasons why these different content silos have different metadata models, right, and different ways of searching, is because it's very difficult to apply one overarching metadata model and have everyone apply the same set of tags. Okay, so that's why metadata is problematic. Okay, now another problem with metadata, that even if we're able to tag up our content using metadata, so the metadata is generally pretty limited in the type of elements that are available, unless I go ahead and have some kind of a way of changing the metadata element and the values available in an organized, structured way across the whole organization. And even so, that content, as the content becomes related to new ways of using it, new contexts, it's very difficult to go ahead and keep updating that content with new metadata. Okay, because it's very difficult to relate metadata to new contexts and make relationships between the metadata. Okay. So the best practice is to maintain these categorizations and relationships outside the content. Okay, and that's where we get into the taxonomy and the classification. Okay, so taxonomy, or in the data world we call this subject scheme. Okay, but it allows you to define a set of controlled values for classifying your content. Those are often called subjects, or they're called facets. And these subjects or facets are organized in hierarchies. Okay, you can imagine like a taxonomy or a hierarchy of terms. Okay, now you can also create relationships between these subjects. Okay, for example, product version A of the widget is supported on Windows and Linux. Okay, so I can make relationships between different subjects, where subject is an operating system and a subject may be a list of my products, or it may be a list of different types of people using my product, etc. Now, taxonomies can be modular, okay, as opposed to metadata. So taxonomies can be modular, so different business units can develop and maintain and utilize different parts of that taxonomy that are relevant to them. Okay. Okay, so it's not something where you have to create everything in one big fell swoop and then push it to everybody. Okay, you can modularize a taxonomy, and different business units can be charged of maintaining those and applying them to their own content, or pushing out those taxonomies so other people can use them. Okay, so it's in a modular fashion, and the taxonomy can evolve to adapt to new situations and new contexts, right? So as stuff is happening in product development, or in support, or in different realities are happening around how our products are being used or purchased or whatever. So the taxonomy and the subject scheme can always be adapting to these new situations. So that's the taxonomy. That's basically building and maintaining the set of control values for the classification. The classification is actually the act of categorizing the content using those subjects. Okay. Now, like we mentioned before, the classification is actually maintained separate from the content itself. Okay, that means that taxonomists and subject matter experts and the content developers themselves, they can classify the content. It doesn't require you to own or change the content. So if you want to be able, if you or somebody is in charge or is tasked with classifying content that's being written by or controlled by somebody else, okay, then you do not have to own that content or actually be able to actually change that content. You can classify and mark up that content without being an owner of that content, or the content owner can basically outsource or task somebody else who would actually classify the content. Or, probably another situation which might be more useful is that the owners of the content would classify it the best way they can. For example, I can classify my content and say, okay, my content is relevant to a certain product, certain operating system, certain type of user. Somebody else, might be able to say, oh, this product, we're using this product as part of an overall solution in a certain geographical location, okay, or a certain use case. Okay, so the people who own and develop the content may not even know about that context. Okay, they classify it in a way that they know about, and others in the organization can classify that same content in another way, in an accessory way, and in a way, and apply a context that they know about. Okay. Okay, these taxonomies can be drawn from other enterprise systems. Okay, so often these taxonomies or parts of these taxonomies already live in different parts of the organization. They can be reused. Okay, you don't have to go create everything from scratch. Okay, so for example, corporate enterprise content management systems may have a taxonomy already built that you can reuse. Okay, CRM systems may already have taxonomy that's been, or part of a taxonomy that's been created, and you can reuse that. Okay, we'll pull that together. PLM systems often have a lot of engineering data or nitty-gritty feature information that can be reused also. Okay, these are examples of how you can draw taxonomies from other systems and reuse them in other systems. Now, you guys might be asking or shaking your head and saying, you know what, this is very good. Like taxonomy is really good, but classifying all this content takes a lot of time. And Joe, you just mentioned that there was all these different social feature, super duper, latest mousetrap type of social stuff that's out there that I'm not going to have a control over, and how am I going to go classify all that? Okay, so it turns out that there are methods of automatically classifying content. Now, it's not perfect sometimes, but it's often really good enough to get a much better value add on getting contextually relevant content to the person who's looking for it. Okay, and we partner with a company called Ingenia, who has algorithms that allow you to automatically classify content based on learning about content that has already been classified using your taxonomy. And that allows you to do a number of different things besides the contextual relevance in the search. It allows you to gain insights about that content. Allows you to innovate the navigation and the associations between the content. It allows you to enable natural language search. Okay, so we basically built on top of the taxonomy filtering search. Okay, and allows you to, again, this is something that a lot of people talk about, personalizing that user experience. Okay, by driving content to the user based on what we know about them and what they're trying to look for. Okay, so classification for highly structured information that we have control over, we can do, but often there's a lot of other content out there that we can classify in a level that would definitely be useful and would provide a large value add to your solution. Could we talk about taxonomy? So the next level is we're talking about joining silos. Okay, Joe, you talked about breaking down the silos. That's not a good idea. You talked about joining the silos. Now you're just giving me this whole business about the taxonomy. So what does all this mean about joining the silos? So joining the silos means a couple of different things. On the one hand, joining the silos means being able to reach in and give access to content that lives in other silos. Okay, that's the first thing we talked about. The other thing we talked about with the taxonomy is the activity of classifying the content that lives in those silos as I'm authoring them. So, for example, what you see here is and that can happen in all the different types of silos that classically we're used to using, okay, like CMS, like document management, like CRM, like Salesforce for support, like Jive or Lithium for communities. Okay, many of these systems, these tools that are used by various silos in organizations, they have facilities for tagging of the content and for applying a taxonomy to the content. And by pushing your standard taxonomy to these different systems, okay, you can provide a you can help to provide a normalized experience in joining those silos. Okay, so here's an example of what we built for a customer of how they're able to use taxonomy inside of SharePoint and inside of a web-based XML authoring tool. Okay, doesn't show all those crazy tags. Okay, but someone can go in and write a safety information, okay, knowledge-based article, and then tag them based on the taxonomy that's being pushed in there from the CRM system. Okay. Here's another example. This is an example of how in Salesforce, for example, which is a CRM system, which can be used for creating articles, knowledge articles. Here's a way that you can classify using taxonomies inside Salesforce. If you notice there, you can create categorizations, or you can also import categorization trees, okay, from other systems using using certain types of text files, etc., or using API. Okay, and once you're synchronizing your taxonomy into the system like Salesforce, so not only are your service people being able to, and your support people be able to find content based on the taxonomy, but they're also able to tag up content using the same taxonomy. Okay. Okay, so drawing towards the end, we're talking about, taking a leap to a new paradigm, and the new paradigm is called dynamic enterprise content. Okay, breaking down the silos, or really joining the silos, is something called dynamic enterprise content. Now, that means a number of different things that we've spoken about. We're talking about giving access to a variety of different content, different types of content, all those different silos, documentation, how-to articles, etc. Okay, and also the domain knowledge we spoke about, which is growing in importance. We're talking about context filtering, which means quick, goal-oriented access to contextually relevant content based on the taxonomy and the classifications that we did. We're talking about personalized documentation, meaning allowing users, your readers, internal, external, to assemble content as they need on demand, to render it to PDFs, to render it to EPUBs for ebooks, and to be able to view that content on their laptop or for offline mobile access. It means engaging your customers and allowing them to participate, allowing them to add content in a controlled way, allowing them to give feedback, allowing them to express approval, and share knowledge with others. Okay, we're talking about providing a modern user experience. Okay, not where we're jumping around to different websites to find stuff. We're talking about enabling a smooth transition between mobile and desktop. Right? There's all kinds of studies. There's a Forrester study I saw the other day, and it has detailed information about when people read different types of content using different devices and where they are. For example, when they're in their kitchen, they're more likely to read this kind of content on their tablet, and they're on the bus, they're more likely to read, okay, etc. So more and more we need to adapt to this modern user experience, which creates a transition between mobile and desktop. Okay, often people are starting a search or looking for content on their mobile device. They'll move to their desktop later on, then they'll come back and move back to a mobile device. Okay, that's something we need to be able to support. And analytics, marketing people, tech people, everyone's interested in analytics. People want to know who's accessing the information. They want to know what content they're being accessed, and they want to know how often that content is being accessed. And why? Because that helps us to improve our product. Okay, it helps us to maintain the content that's most important. Okay, it helps us to give importance or give more budget and more attention to content that our community finds to be more important. Okay, so with the remaining minutes, I'm going to show you a short example of how this can work. Okay. So I'm showing you a dynamic platform now on the screen. Okay, and this is a sample platform that we've implemented for customers. Okay, and you can look any way you want. But the idea is that you can go into a system and you can say, okay, I can do a search. Okay, but I can do a search, not only just a free text search, but I can do a search based on my taxonomy and based on relevance. So I can say, okay, you know what? I'm working on a particular type of content, particular type of product or device. I'm using, a certain type of protocol maybe or an operating system, and I'm trying to do a certain type of task. Okay. Okay. Now once I hit the search button, okay. Oops. Okay, I can view the content that's relevant to what I'm trying to do. Okay. And using an interface that we're all used to using. I mean, we're all used to going to Amazon and buying a book or a camera or something. We're all used to going and buying, tickets online in Kayak or one of those places. We're all used to narrowing down our search results based on facets, based on some kind of taxonomy, based on some kind of way that the content is being tagged, and based on knowing how many hits I'm going to find, right? So don't, do a search or drill me down in some kind of a navigation system and show me 0 hits, okay? So contextual relevance, doing a filter based on the taxonomy that we just spend time and effort to apply, and then I can get the search results that is most relevant to me in manuals, in articles, in videos, and any other type of content you might have, any other type of silo that you have, whether it be community or training or whatever else. Now, once I found the content, I can easily want to be able to view that content right here on the screen. I don't want to have to jump into some other place to find the content. I want to either see all the content, if it's a topic of information, if it's a knowledge-based article, if it's a video. Okay, I want to see it right there on the screen. Don't jump me around. Okay, so I can go ahead and I can view something else, or I can fine-tune my search or do another search. Okay, or at least show me a snippet. If I'm grabbing from a system like a learning management system, like e-learning, so maybe show me a snippet of the module or the learning module that I'm thinking about jumping to. Make sure it's relevant, and if it's relevant, then I can go and I can open it up. Okay. Now if I find content that's useful for me, then let me take that content and add it to my own collection. Okay. So once I add content to my own collection, that gives me the possibility to render it to a different format, to download it to my mobile device, okay, and to share it. Okay, so we've seen how a system that's a dynamic web system can take content that's tagged up using a taxonomy, and how we can do a contextual relevant search and find the most relevant information, take that content, make comments on it, pull it into my own collection, render it, and share it, and view offline. And whether it be a video, whether it be a how-to article, okay, whether it be a topic of information, whether it be a community post, the idea of being able to find the information or have access to that information in one portal, okay, with easy access to be able to jump and find out more information and jump into that silo when it becomes relevant. So I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you found this interesting. Please feel free to be in touch with us at Sweet Solutions if we can help you, or if you have any questions, we'll be very happy to help you in the future.
Joe, thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found that this presentation was enjoyable and informative. We'll be back in about 3 weeks with Joe Gelb again, and this time with Mark Baker, with our next webinar, Every Page is Page 1 with SweetShare. That's when Joe and Mark will discuss defining customer content for optimal use and online access. That'll be on Tuesday, March 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you found this webinar helpful, so please take a moment and follow us on LinkedIn. And thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in about 3 weeks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.